County Election Commissioner. So I'll talk about some of the security measures we have in Douglas County. I'll start off with some of the physical measures we have in our office. We moved into a new building back in October of 2019. The building is a brick building. The only windows are the front entrance, and we do have concrete bollards in front of the entrance for security there. We have a security system, obviously. We did get a brand new camera system this year. We now have 39 cameras that monitor inside and outside of our building, 24 hours a day, obviously. We have controlled access everywhere. Like a lot of facilities do, a key card swipe. And then where ballots are kept in the vault or the counting room, you have to have double authentication. So you have to have a card swipe and a PIN number. We have a PIN pad to get in there as well. And so, we can control access for all of our employees as to which ones have access to that. Inside of our vault, which is right off the counting room where we store ballots, we have safes inside of the vault, and that's where the military-grade thumb drives, both ones that are blank or ones that are used to program or ones that have results on them, are kept. And we have different safes for each of those different options. And of course, we have a different combination on the safe than the PIN pad, and that's even more limited as to who has the combination to the safe. On election day, we always have sheriffs. We work very closely with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, and we always have sheriffs on site in the evening for traffic control, but during the day, we have deputies there throughout the day. Our sheriff did come out about a month ago. Mr. Bennett was there from the Secretary of State's office with him, and he just wanted to look through our security measures, the machines, see the seals on the machines, things of that nature, just so he had an idea, and he brought his chief investigator with him too. We do have drop boxes, which I'll transition into a little bit of by mail now. We do have 13 drop boxes in Douglas County. We do have cameras on every drop box that are 24/7 cameras. Some of the security features of our drop boxes too are we do have concrete bollards around them. The slot on our drop boxes is extremely small. You can get maybe 3 or 4 pieces of paper in there. It's the way they're manufactured. We do have, this year we have just installed fire suppression systems in each of the drop boxes. It's a dry fire suppression system. It'd be highly, highly unlikely that you could start a fire in there, especially with the slot being so small, but we have installed that this year. When our drop boxes are emptied, there's a whole process with that. We have a county vehicle, 2 individuals of differing parties. Each drop box has its own receptacle or bag with seals on it. And so there's a whole process with that. Again, those are under video surveillance as well. Our full-time temporary employees go through background checks when they are hired by the county. So there's that level as well. For the by mail ballots in Douglas County, it's no secret now, about 50% is by mail voting and 50% is polling place voting. I believe in Nebraska we've had unexcused absentee voting since 2000, I believe. I'm going off of memory here. Somebody can correct me if that's wrong. But nearly a quarter of a century now, you've not had to have an excuse to vote by mail. We check signatures. when the requests come in, and that's all done by humans. That's not done by a computer or anything of that nature. That's one of the reasons in Douglas County for the presidential general election, we'll hire about 140 to 150 full-time, temporary, and part-time employees. And we will work nights and weekends, and during the day we have a night shift, and then weekend work as well to process early voting requests and ballots. We now have the voter ID component, which the legislature put forth. You comply with that when you vote by mail at the time of your request. And so we check all of that information as well as the signature on the request. So if you do not meet all of the requirements on the request, you will not get a ballot mailed to you by us. Then when ballots are returned, we check the signature again at that time. We have a daily audit every day once ballots start coming back. We scan our ballots in by each drop box so we know where they came from and how many. We also go to the post office and pick up our mail every day. It's just another little level of security. The ballots aren't sitting on the mail truck while it makes numerous stops before it gets to our office. We go over there and get the mail, and we scan those in accordingly too. So we have different scans that we do throughout the day, checking them in, then checking signatures. Then at the end of the day, we compare the scans to make sure that we haven't missed anything or scanned something twice, something of that nature. And we do that each and every day. I would say, on average, 77% of all ballots in Douglas County are now returned via a drop box. Our drop boxes are safe, they're secure, and clearly our voters like them and have embraced them across all political spectrums. We encourage voters to use our drop box. The post office is a valuable partner in getting mail ballots out, of course, but we all know that mail service has slowed. But you have about a month to get them out there. But it's the most direct way and the most secure is to use our drop boxes. You, the voter, put your ballot in our drop box and we pick it up. If you use the postal service, you put it in a box, it goes on a truck, it goes through possibly several locations or different hands before it arrives at us. And so that's why we encourage voters to use our drop boxes for that very reason. It's the most direct way from the voter to us. So we have a process in place where the employees, if they don't think the signature matches or there's another issue on either the request or the ballot, it'll go to a supervisor. It goes up the chain of command, basically. It'll go to a supervisor, to our by-mail supervisor. She's been there over 25 years, the lady who oversees our by-mail early voting department. Then it'll go to the election manager. Then ultimately it'll come to my deputy and I, if we need to at that point in time. Some additional measures we have, as Chris mentioned, in Douglas County we are an anomaly. We do program and print all of our own ballots in Douglas County. So ballots never leave our possession in Douglas County until they either go in the mail or they go to the polling place. So we and our 2 ballot printers are in our counting room, in that secure counting room. So after, I'll just briefly mention it, you've heard it, but we do all kinds of testing before the election, of course, Test X and all of that, to make sure that the machines are accurate. Post-election, we do a big, what we call canvass or audit. So when individuals go to the polling place, in the poll books, there's a barcode there. After the election's over, we have to scan all of those barcodes in where people signed in And then we take all of those scans and we match them up to the number of ballots that were ran through for each precinct. And then we see if those match up. And if there's a discrepancy, then we'll work to determine. Sometimes, a lot of times, as Chris said, it's human error. When you're scanning books day after day, sometimes a scan gets twice. I mean, it's monotonous work. I mean, you know what happens. None of us are perfect. It's never malicious. It's just none of us are perfect. And so we have the big canvas or audit process. And then after that, we will have the hand count that's administered by the Secretary of State's office. They let us know which precincts, and we go and get the ballots, physically get the ballots out of the vault, and we bring them down and we hand tabulate those. We have started a pilot program in Douglas County. I guess it's not pilot anymore, but we now have allowed or are having observers that watch our post-election audit process. So they come to our office and observe that. And we work with the parties on that, the local county parties, to do that. So beyond that, you know, I shared Chris's sentiments. I think elections are very safe, and they're very secure, and they're very accurate in the state of Nebraska. And we just have numerous checks and balances. And I believe voters should be given the option to vote the way they feel is most comfortable, whether that's early voting by mail, in person at the election office, or, you know, on election day. The number one reason we hear these days that voters like to vote by mail is not necessarily because they're out of town or they're ill or anything like that, because they can sit at their kitchen table and they can research issues, candidates, judges. This time around in Douglas County, if you live in the city of Omaha, which is about 85% of the county, you will have 13 issues to vote on besides candidates and judges. 6 from the state, 2 charter amendments from the city, 6 bond issues from the city, and a good life district. So voters will have 13 issues to read through and to vote on besides candidates and issues. And that's the number one reason we hear people like to vote by mail, is because they can take their time in the comfort of their home, their office, or wherever it may be to research issues. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, well, thank you for that. I want to start off by asking you about voter ID, since I endured a 14-hour filibuster on it.
Yes.
Is it working? Kind of give me a one over the world on it.
Absolutely. So May was the first election in which we had the voter ID. I would say that it went spectacularly well. We had over 95,000 people vote in Douglas County alone. We only had 11 of the special provisionals where people didn't have the correct ID, photo ID, to vote. So 11 out of 95,000, I think, is, I would say, 100% success, or 99.999, whatever the decimal is. That's in large part to our poll workers in Douglas County, and I think across the state, the training they received, the media campaign that we have had from the Secretary of State's office, and I know all my fellow election officials across the state, beginning in January, even, well, I shouldn't say January, but we did begin even before, you know, it was implemented exactly. But we've spent the last year going to all kinds of groups and organizations, all kinds of media outlets, and educating poll workers and voters. So in my opinion, it has been a big success. We're not looking for many problems in November. We know the numbers will be bigger because it'll be a bigger turnout for the election, but it'll still be relatively small. And of course, we found 99.9% of all individuals either use a Nebraska state ID or driver's license, because I think they said 98%, nearly 98% have that. And that's the most common use of the ID. So I guess the short answer is yes, it's been successful and it's been implemented quite well.
And that goes both in person and mail-in, they're both?
Absolutely, yep, absolutely. Again, the easiest and simplest way for the by mail is to write your driver's license number or state ID number on there. In our office, if there is an element missing or we have questions, if we have an email or a phone number, we will attempt to reach out to the voter to correct that, to help him or her correct that issue.
All right, let's see if we don't have some questions for you. Questions from Ryan?
Okay.
Oh. Senator Conrad, sorry, I looked right.
Thank you, Chair. Bacon black,
They
back
keep
cleanup.
pulling
This time. We'll take turns. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Chair.
Sure.
So let me just take a step back here maybe for a second and maybe broaden the lens to try and figure out what really the key issues are in this hearing, I guess, and in moving forward. So having sat on this committee for a couple of years and been involved in campaigns and elections for a couple of decades in different capacities, it seems to me that the main concerns around elections, and I think everybody shares the values and the belief that we don't want folks who are not eligible voting, right? We don't want people who are dead voting. We don't want people to vote twice, right? We don't want people to impersonate a voter, right? And then the other bucket around maybe errors in counting or tabulation or things of that nature. But those seem to be the biggest, most frequent kind of concerns that I think this committee's heard surrounding elections, particularly in recent years. So, Brian, maybe it would be helpful for everybody if you could just walk us through a little bit about, from the registration process to the voting process, what systems, laws, practices are in place to make sure that somebody who's not eligible is not voting. So whether it's age or citizenship or past criminal involvement, which I know is a little murky right now, but if somebody tries to register to vote and they're legitimately not an eligible elector, they're not eligible to vote, how does the system go about weeding that out, an ineligible voter?
Sure. Well, I'll start off by qualifying this a little bit. We have a statewide voter registration system in the state of Nebraska. So I will try and answer some of your questions, but Mr. Ben will be much more qualified.
If it's better, I can take it up with Wayne
Why
later.
don't you ask him, because and he knows all what happens behind the scenes.
He can think
and
on
that,
it then. Okay.
And,
But I think,
and then we don't have to repeat ourselves.
Yeah. That's very good. Thank you for that. But Brian,
Yes.
one other thing, and you had mentioned it, and I know that this has, always been available to a certain degree, and then Nebraska has provided some uniformity in the approach to poll watchers or observers in recent years through legislation and in cooperation with a lot of different stakeholders who are passionate about, ensuring each individual's voters' rights and overall election integrity and security. But if you could just perhaps remind the committee exactly about how these poll watchers, poll observers work on the precinct level, and then also, just reaffirm, and you just mentioned it briefly, when it comes to a tight race or a recount, people have the right to have observers there to watch that process work through. Your team itself consists of members of different political parties to ensure a level of fairness, I guess, at each stage. So if you would just help us understand the poll watcher observation piece, how your team is structured, and then the right to observation upon recount or hand count.
Sure. So poll watchers are a valuable part of the process, and we've always welcomed them since I've been there in Douglas County. Again, to Kruse's point, we have nothing to hide, and we want there to be fair and free elections. We all do, of course. That's what the goal of everybody is. So poll watchers are a valuable process. I've had everybody from the Department of Justice as poll watchers to those appointed by nonprofit and party organizations. And, there is some limitation by statute. Poll watchers, by their very nature, are there to watch.
Right.
Interaction is to be limited. They're not to interfere. But of course, if they see something that they believe is incorrect, they should reach out to our office, the Secretary of State's office, or their organization immediately. And, we obviously will get those corrected as quickly as possible.
And let me just ask a follow-up there,
Sure.
because we want to have participation and uniformity and clarity and confidence in our elections, but the focal point needs to be on the voter themselves. The voter has the right to be free from intimidation when they cast their vote. The voter has a right to be free from harassment when they cast their vote. The voter has the right to cast their vote as they see fit. And of course, election workers have the right to be not subjected to harassment or interference or intimidation.
Yeah, and there are some state statutes, they have to be 8 feet away from sign-in books, ballots, where you cast your ballot, things of that nature.
Right.
And for some of the very reasons that you have stated. But the statute also says that, they can't be impeding voters or affecting the flow and things of that nature. We are fortunate. We still we live in a great state.
Yes.
Where 99.9% of folks are respectable. We have not had any issues in the past in Douglas County. I believe issues have been minimal around the state, if any.
Yeah.
We're looking for that again. Our office, my office does create, we have a 3-page handout for poll worker observers, and we cite the statutes in there, and it's bullet point, and we will send that to the parties and the different organizations. We ask them to distribute that to poll watchers so that everything is clear and concise. Everybody's on the same page. We also distribute that to our poll workers, of course, and talk about it in our poll worker training, just so everybody has the same level of understandings and can cite the same statutes, essentially.
Yeah. So then just tell us then, that helps provide clarity for how the poll observer, poll watcher piece works. But then for the observation piece, if there is a hand count or a contested or a recount, or when does that?
Yep.
I guess I didn't know it went from a pilot to a standard practice. That's helpful to know.
I will say this. I believe the statute says county parties can appoint one observer to watch the counting of ballots, which we have had observers in the past. Our new facility, I think the one thing I didn't mention is we have windows in our counting room as well. From the lobby, if you come in, we have the desk where the public is serviced. We have 2 big windows right behind that. You can see everything. And then on the south side of the room, we have observation windows as well. If, like on election day, we are using that hallway and the room next to it because we're preparing ballots and bringing them over, so the observation window is unavailable on election day because there's live ballots and workers moving through there. So then we will set up computer monitors with the live feed in the lobby area so that observers can use that. But so there can be observers when you're counting ballots. But then if there is a recount, yes, there are statutes that allow for a representative to come and watch the recount as well. And usually, in my experience, it's been volunteers who are usually poll watchers. It's usually volunteers who observe election counting, but it's usually lawyers that will come for the recount.
Great, very good. I think that's all I have for now. Thanks, Chair. Thanks,
Okay.
Brian.
Yes, thank you.
Brian, one of the things that seems to be coming back as an issue that folks want to say is the flaw in our system is that some say that the counting process they have confidence in. But when the data leaves that machine and is somehow shared then with the Secretary of State, that's where the fallacy, the flaw, the problem is.
Sure.
Explain to me how that process works.
Absolutely. So we have 9 machines in Douglas County. In 2018, I believe it was, the Secretary of State worked with the state legislature, and the state legislature allocated money to buy all 93 counties counting machines. So all the counting machines in Nebraska are owned by the state of Nebraska. And there's one general contract from the Secretary of State's office. So we have 9 DS-850s. At that time, they were the most modern machine. There's a DS-950 now that has since come out. But each county has different according to their needs. I have more machines and faster machines because of my volume. But what happens is, once we have ran the ballots through the machine, then, and the machines, as Chris has already said, are not connected to the internet, and they're never connected to each other either. So then you take a military-grade thumb drive, which we get from ES&S, and you put that in the machine. We will break the seal where the port is. We have a seal in there. You break the port, or the seal on the port. Then each machine has a thumb drive, and you take the results from each machine. Then we go to what we call an air-gapped computer. That's a laptop that is also provided by the Secretary of State's office that is not connected to the outside world. You put in our case, you put all 9 thumb drives in there, and then that brings all of the results together for every race from every machine. Then we take those results and burn them on an external CD drive. So like CDs like we used to listen to back in the day. Then we take that CD, then we put it in a different external hard drive to a computer that is connected to the internet essentially. And then we send results to the Secretary of State's office through a secure portal, and then we will release the results on our website at the same time through that mechanism. Everybody now, at least in Douglas County, everybody gets the results at the same time. We don't give media results early. We don't give candidates results early. At 8 o'clock, the first results are boom on our website. Everybody gets them at the exact same time. Now, I would take the opportunity, if I may, just real quick. There are always some ballots in Douglas County, and I believe Lancaster, but Douglas for sure, that are counted after Election Day. So I just want to be very clear. We do not find ballots. We do not find ballots. We do count some ballots after Election Day, and that's part of the election integrity or security process. Ballots turned into our drop boxes and that come through the U.S. mail before 8 o'clock on Election Day, our signatures are verified, and all of that process is done on Wednesday and Thursday following the election. They're opened and then counted on the Friday after the election. The reason we do that is because all of our resources on Election Day are focused on the polling places. We have 40 workstations, we have 40 telephone operators all day long answering questions from voters and poll workers. We don't have the staff, the ability, or the equipment to process all of those. And also, you have until 8 p.m. to turn those in. So if we get 10,000 ballots on Election Day, which we very well could, undecided voters or just voters who choose to wait. It's their choice to turn them in late, but you can see it takes time. I mean, even if we started at 8 o'clock and processed those all night long, we still wouldn't have them done by the next morning. You know what I mean? And then provisional ballots by state law, you have until the second Friday following the election. Now, on occasion, if we get done doing our processes, we may count early. In the presidential general, I can assure you we will not, because we'll have between 5,000 and 6,000 provisional ballots. So we will need that full week post-election to go through all of those. Provisional ballots in Douglas County is about an 83% acceptance rate. So it takes a little bit of time to do it, but if the voter does it and takes their time, there's a really good chance that their ballot will be counted.
If we were to shift and say it was Scotts Bluff, process is the same, just a smaller scale.
Essentially, I think, Sherry Schweitzer's here from Seward County, so she'd be I'd say a small to medium-sized county, and she can probably speak to that. Also, Sherry's been the county clerk for many more years than me, and, can probably speak to that better than me. Knows lots of different clerks and processes over the years.
Now, when it comes down to you're checking the signatures, how does that work?
So, again, on the request and the ballots, those come into our office. We date stamp all of them, so we have a date on them. And then individuals sit down and they go through our power profile system, which is our voter registration system. So we also have agency sharing with the Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV. So that's how the component for voter ID is checked now on the request. So an individual sits down and there's a whole checklist they go through, but they check signatures with signatures that are on the screen in their profile in a voter registration record. We often have numerous signatures for voters because, one, we do have DMV sharing, but if you did a paper form, we'll scan that in. There's other various forms that the Election Commission may ask you to sign, or early voting request. We scan those onto the voter's record. So we do have, not always, but I would say for a lot of the folks, we do have numerous signatures in which we can compare to. And so we do that, and again, if for some reason they think that the signature doesn't match, then it'll go to a supervisor. It goes up the chain. If we don't think it matches, we will reject it. We'll send a letter to the voter. We'll either send a letter or an email, which is the letter in an email form. It's the same thing in Douglas County. And then we ask them to resubmit if they would like to. We tell them it was rejected. And then we ask them if you would still like to do this, to resubmit.
All right, thank you. Let's see if we got more questions. Senator Aller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Brian, for being here. God bless you for what you do and all the counties, what they do. And thanks for your explanation of the trail of the information coming from the machines to the air gap computer.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the thumb drives.
Yes.
That feed and then eventually go onto a disc, burn on a disc. I feel like I'm in high school.
I know, right?
But so, and this is maybe a question in fairness to you, but the Secretary of State can probably answer this, or Wayne can answer this. The Secretary of State provides you this air gap computer?
Yes, that it was. I don't know if it was part of the big allocation that you allocated funds. The legislature allocated funds for.
Okay.
I don't know if it was part of that, but yes, the air gap computer, it's my understanding, was purchased and then
So all this
provided to us.
And that's fine, thank you. So all this information is aggregated onto this air gap computer, right, for each county. Does each county have an air gap?
I believe so,
Yep.
but Mr. Benna can.
Wayne's giving a thumb up.
Okay.
So my question, and this will be for Wayne, but it seems to me that, I mean, your description of the steps that take place, the air gap computer, the thumb drives, which are the best in the world, I'm sure, and very secure. But it seems like we have, this is my first understanding of exactly how that process works, and I thank you for that. But it seems like we've opened up more vulnerabilities. I mean, air gap computer, is it hackable? I mean, that's ultimately where all the information is aggregated, right, and sent to the Secretary of State.
Well, I would say that may be for a software engineer or somebody to,
Sure,
but
no, I understand.
in what I would say is, it's the information from that election is on your gap computer, but it's never hooked to the outside
So
world.
how does that air gap computer communicate to the Secretary of State's office?
So then what we do is you take the thumb drives
Right,
and you put it on the air gap computer.
right.
Then once it has the results from the air gap computer in our office, there's an external hard drive, and it's burned onto a CD. Then we take the CD with the results from the air gap computer. We physically take that CD out, like a CD you used to listen to, and then we take it over to another computer and put the CD in an external hard drive. This computer reads the results off the CD, and then they're uploaded to the Secretary of State's office and the outside world.
Vis-a-vis the internet?
It's a secure portal, so I would say yes, it's the internet. To the Secretary of State's office, he can probably answer that.
Okay.
But the results then go on our website, which is definitely the internet.
We just gave Wayne a heads up for the question. That's
Okay.
I'm sure he can answer.
So I hope that helps explain.
It does. No, it does, and I thank you
Okay.
for that. It might create a little more anxiety for me, but that's fine.
Okay.
Well, like you need more?
I need.
Well, it was meant to give you more reassurance, so I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. They've got meds for that.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
That's a different hearing.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Brian, for
Yes.
testify today. How long do you keep the ballots, the actual paper ballots, after the election?
So by law, we have to keep them for 22 months, which we do. In our office, we have 14,000 square feet upstairs, and we have a 6,000 square foot warehouse in the basement. So they're all kept in our basement. That's all under camera and security, just like up above, but 22 months.
And under lock and key and
Under lock and key and camera, absolutely. And then they can be shredded, which we do. And we have to just, for one thing, for us, we have to for sheer volume. The only way that we wouldn't do that is if a judge,
Right.
were to order us to keep them for some reason.
and you do a test to see if accuracy. 10% was given earlier.
Oh, yes. So on the post-election hand count audit, and Mr. Bennett can clarify this again if I misspeak, but I'm pretty sure this is right. In the presidential, in past elections, general elections, it's 10% statewide, but it's not necessarily 10% for each county. Like in Douglas County, we had 3 precincts with 3 races that we did. So that amounted to, 3,000 or 4,000 actual tallies we did amongst all the races and all the precincts. And so we do that each election for statewide. When we have special elections or city elections in Douglas County, we also do that. We also do that on our own, just to ensure, again, accuracy.
Some days, maybe a week or two following the election, once everything calms down, would it be possible to run those ballots back through the machines to get 100% count done?
So, we do if there's a recount. To your point, we do if there's a recount. I will tell you this: in May of 2020, we had a recount in a county commissioner race, and there was about 6,000 votes cast in that, and there was a difference of 3 votes. And when we did our recount through the machines, and so we have the 9 machines, so some of the ballots would have been counted on different machines because we just take boxes and take them to the next machine. So the recount also came down to 3 ballots. So you can see the accuracy of these machines. To answer your question, though, anything's possible, but the more you run the ballots through the machine, they get, it's like anything. The more you run them through there, they get ripped, they get torn, they get tired. Essentially, I don't know what other adjective to use. Also, we have to certify the election because then that has to be gone on to the Secretary of State's office so that they can certify, so that electorates can vote, so that we can have inauguration, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a time crunch. I mean, there's a time frame there. I suppose anything's possible, but in that time frame, we're doing our audit, which is all hands on deck, the canvas and audit, where we're comparing every precinct and the books and the ballots ran through. And so to do 100%, I'm not sure what the practicality is that from a time frame and other things, but
Peace of mind?
if you already have numerous steps in place for peace of mind, and our elections are accurate and fair, and we know that by the sampling and by all of our tests. So I guess that's what I would say.
And you also brought up that people like mail-in ballot because they can put the ballot on their coffee table or on the refrigerator and review it. Why can't they use a sample ballot?
Well, they could. Sure, they could. And we make those available on our website. So they absolutely can. And that is the big message we're trying to get out in Douglas County right now is for those individuals who live in Omaha that are headed to the polling place, you probably want to look at this before you arrive and stand in the booth for 30 or 40 minutes.
And my last question, you had said that people enjoy the drop boxes because it's convenient and it's the most direct route.
Sure.
Wouldn't the most direct route be bringing the ballot to the election commissioner's office where you get an actual and have them show an ID?
Well, we do the ID component now as set forth by the legislature on the request. It's a convenience thing for voters because they're open 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so for individuals, for all kinds of variety of reasons, illness, daycare, swing shift jobs, whatever, out of town, in town, on the way to the airport, etc. They can bring them to our office, and we have a drop box in the parking lot, we have one in the entryway, and we have one inside our lobby. So we do have some voters that do choose to drive to our office and bring them in, but they still put them in a drop box in our lobby.
Are the ones in your lobby counted in the 13 drop boxes?
No, since they're inside our office, we have 13. If you count
External.
those two, external, exactly, external, outside of the building.
Okay, so the one outside of the building is counted.
Is counted as one of the 13, but the one in the entryway and in the lobby are not in that number.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
John?
I'm getting that if you ask one more
One
question,
more.
Senator Howe. So on the drop boxes, are they all, do they all have camera surveillance?
Oh, yes, yes, we have 24-hour
Good, okay.
camera surveillance,
Second
yes.
question, on mail-in ballots, be it mail-in ballots or absentee ballots, is there a threshold that you monitor on the address that a number of ballots might be sent to? Is there a threshold that says, 12 at one address seems like a bit much here?
Not necessarily, because the law does allow for certain individuals to use the election office as their address. Homeless, indigent, a truck driver, for example, may use our office as our address because he may be a resident here, but
Well, those,
has a post office box.
Right.
So, and also you have assisted living facilities.
but discounting those, I understand that, but discounting those, but is there a threshold that draws to your attention that, that seems like a large number of mail-in ballots going to X address?
X address? No, I would say we don't have any procedure in place for that. If, but no. So if somebody, say they have 10 people living in a house that are registered there, then if all of them requested a ballot and everything checked out, we would send it there. To answer your question, no, we don't have any threshold for 123 Main Street as the number of ballots.
Okay, thank you.
Sir Conrad?
Thank you, Chair Brewer. Just to follow up on my friend Senator Halloran's question there, because I know his intent would never be to punish big families who are civically minded and all may wish to vote.
Love big family.
Yes. And I think that's, one reason among many why we don't have a threshold in place for that. But I think that Brian, I want to give you a chance to maybe tease out one step further from your dialogue with Senator Halloran there. He's asking about what considerations, safeguards are in place when you get a request from a voter that seems suspect in regards to vote by mail. Sure. If somebody is requesting a ballot that isn't eligible or already cast their ballot or whatever it might be, there's mechanisms in place to say, hey, we don't just get a request and send it out to anybody at any time. We have to work through a very deliberative process there. Can you just maybe help us understand that?
Sure. Yeah, that's right. So, we have the voter ID component now. You've got to be registered to vote and be at a valid address. As a general rule, you can't be registered at a commercial address. However, some commercial addresses do have apartments in them.
Yeah.
Some small town funeral homes, even a funeral home may have an apartment in it where a night watchman or a family lives or something of that nature. So there are some exceptions to the commercial address rule. So you have to be registered, it has to be a valid address, we verify your signature, we verify the voter ID component, and then so there's that security mechanism. I will say this, when we print poll books for voters who go to the polling place, in the signature line, if they have requested an early voting ballot, there will be X's in there. There's all X's in there. So the signature line is not available for them to sign. So if they show up at the polling place and the poll worker sees they have all X's in there, in Douglas County, the poll workers are instructed to ask the voter and say, you have requested an early voting ballot. Now, it doesn't mean they've automatically voted that. It means they've requested one. But then they're instructed to say, if you have that ballot, do you have the ability to go and retrieve it and vote it and turn it in before 8 p.m. this evening at a drop box or the election office, because we can't accept early vote by mail ballots at the polling place. The reason we do that is because if they're unable to retrieve it, then we need to go through the provisional process, which takes longer for both poll workers and the voters. It's an option, but if they do have the early voting ballot, that's the easiest and simplest way for both the poll workers and the voters to cast their ballot, if they have the ability to retrieve that.
Yeah, and occasionally, and I know there's mechanisms in place, you don't get your ballot delivered, you spill a cup of coffee
Yeah.
on it, whatever, there's ballot spoliation and cure provisions, all according to law for that when that does happen. But I think that is really helpful. And the very last question here, because I know we're really running late. I think a lot of the concern the committee's heard in regards to vote by mail over the last couple of years has been perhaps some confusion around vote by mail applications and actual ballots.
That's right.
So with the rise of vote by mail, you've seen candidate campaigns, issue campaigns, civic groups, political parties. A lot of people are sending voters
That's right.
vote by mail applications to request a ballot. So it's not unusual for, say, for example, my house where we, both of us are high propensity voters. We never miss an election. We'll even get, a deluge of political mail saying, hey, request your vote by mail ballot, get your vote by mail ballot. And we sometimes like to do it if we can't get to the polls, but I actually like to go to the polls too. So, so I don't always respond to those. But I think there's a lot of confusion sometimes amongst the general public, or even people who are concerned about election integrity saying, well, they got 4 vote by mail applications, they got 4 ballots.
Yeah.
They really didn't get 4 ballots. They got 4 requests. That's protected by free speech. People have a right to send political mail. A voter can throw it in the trash or they can respond to it. If they send in 2 vote by mail applications, they're only getting 1 ballot.
That's right.
Can you just maybe tease out those nuances perhaps?
Sure.
'Cause I think it's a source of confusion for people.
Sure. So I will say that's absolutely correct, that voters can request a by-mail ballot as many times as they want, but they're only going to get 1 ballot because the system only allows for it. It's what we call duplicates.
Right.
And in the office, that's what we call duplicates. But to your point, the parties in the past have sent them out. There's a national organization now, the CVI, Center for Voter Information. They're out of Tennessee. I believe they just sent a huge mailing in Douglas County, like 60,000 people. We know many of those are going to be duplicates because many of those people have already submitted an application. But the system, again, will catch that. So that's right. The system will not allow for numerous ballots to be sent to an individual. We say, and I'm here to say, if anybody in the state of Nebraska gets more than one ballot, they should immediately call the sheriff or go to their election office, but save both ballots so that we can see them. Because there have been some that have said they have received numerous ballots, but to my knowledge, nobody in the state of Nebraska has ever produced more than 1 ballot being sent to them. So our advice is definitely to save. If that were to happen, you have to save both of those and contact the property authorities in the election office or the Secretary of State's office so that we can review them.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
One of the issues that you hear about are the machines themselves. You use them on election day. Once you're done using them, how are they secured? Where do they go?
Sure. So once we're done using them, then they remain in Douglas County. They remain in our counting room, which is under the key swipe and double authentication at all times. The windows are always open in there. You know, the blinds are always raised. Cameras are always on, but then we have seals in Douglas County that we seal. We seal the ports back up when we're done, and we have a log that we keep those seal numbers on. So when we go to use them again, for whatever reason, we'll look in the log to make sure that the seal we're breaking matches the log.
All right, thank you. All right, when we're on, yes.
Yeah, go.
Really, a
Sanders.
quick question. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here, Brian.
Of course.
Good to have you here and your expertise. I'm going to try and make this a quick answer.
Okay.
It seems the most secure voting is day of. Show your ID, vote that day, but there's still a computer involved ultimately, right, to send the
A
information?
counting machine.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think in our day and time we can ever go back to just day of voting?
I think it would be extremely difficult because you have some counties here that are all by mail now, and that even goes back before the no excuse voting, I believe, to the 90s when that happened, the mid to late 90s, if I recall correctly. And I think it would be very difficult. I think you obviously would have lawsuits upon lawsuits if you tried to do that for I mean, an argument could be made for disenfranchisement. So to answer your question again, I suppose anything's possible, but I think it would be extremely difficult, and I think those who choose to vote by mail often, or those who need to vote by mail just on a rare occasion, maybe someone goes to the polling place all the time, but they got to have surgery or they got to be on a business trip. I truly believe there'd be a big pushback from the voters of Nebraska in a big way if we attempted to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
One more time around.
All right, sorry, I got one more.
All right.
And, you know, and I appreciate Senator Sanders asking that question, and I know Senator, she cares so deeply and is such a strong advocate for our veterans and military families, as is Senator Holcroft, and of course, Senator Brewer and others on this committee as well. But, I mean, we've had vote by mail for military and overseas voters.
It goes back to I just read an article, goes back to the Civil War.
I was just going to say,
Really?
at least, yeah. So I think that we need to be really clear that we don't perpetuate myths and misinformation that vote by mail is not safe. And I think that's why you don't have to respond to this with an editorial comment, it's my own. But I think that's why you've even seen an about face from, for example, the Trump campaign, which has led a lot of concern about vote by mail to now encouraging vote by mail because of what it means for turnout, because it is safe. You do not have to respond to that. I'm not asking you to respond to that. And we'll get into this later with Senator Holcroft's closing. But I do think that there's a very real danger when we have elected officials perpetuating myths and misinformation about our elections. It's another form of voter suppression, and it's wrong. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Brian, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Sherry, come on up.